It's effort. It's 100% effort. It's showing up. It's being there, front lines of these pitch meetings. It's the team going in store every single day and meeting and building relationships with individual store managers or individual distributor reps. But this industry is so personal. It's all about creating one-to-one connections. It's archaic. And if you can crack the archaic nature of the business, it pays dividends. But to somebody that's not used to it, it's incredibly daunting. The reason I'm in 5 states and 2 countries in 2 weeks is because you have to be there. Nothing gets done if you're not there in person. It's the polar opposite of this new Zoom world that we're living in post-COVID. It really is show up, shake hands, something will get done.
Hello and welcome to DTC Podcast. I'm Eric Dyck. Today we're talking linear commerce and white wine spritzes with Ben Soffer, founder and CEO of Spritz Society, as well as host of the Boy with No Job podcast, where Ben has amassed an audience of over 6 million. Linear commerce refers to the process of creating your audience and then using their profiles and direct feedback to create bespoke products that launch into your already warm audience, providing distribution, amplification, and a much higher chance at traction. This was a great chat that covers Ben's strategies with influencer marketing to launch retail businesses, how to stand out in a crowded and competitive alcohol market, and why wine products are uniquely positioned to be D2C darlings. Also, you'll hear why respecting your customers' decisions and opinions is the ultimate key to successful linear commerce. Crack open a spritz because mine are long gone. On with the show. I just got back from D2C Newsletter's C-Suite Mastermind in Las Vegas, and I gotta tell you that this room of 100 D2C and retail operators were just buzzing about Tapcart mobile shopping apps. A lot of the brands in the room are already using Tapcart, and the ones who weren't are thinking about it, because a mobile app is going to improve your retention. It's also going to allow you to diversify your distribution strategies, which has never been more important. And more than that, your customers are just going to love it. Mobile app users have proven to be bigger diehard fans of your brand. They've got higher conversion rates, revenue per session, and LTV compared to users that come to your web-based store. Just like fashion brand Princess Polly, who launched their app in 2019 using Tapcart and now consistently see 20 to 25% of their revenue coming from this channel. It's their second highest revenue channel after their online store. With Tapcart, it's incredibly easy to build, launch, and maintain your mobile apps. So to learn more, go right now to tapcart.com/DTC. That's tapcart.com/DTC. Tell them Eric sent you. Ben, welcome to the D2C Podcast. Can you start by giving me the Spritz Society story?
Sure. Eric, thanks for having me. 2.5 years ago, I was working, or even 3 years ago at this point, I was working at traditional ad agencies. At that time, I was at a company called Blue Hour Studios, but my career is all in the agency world, from VaynerMedia to Horizon to these larger agencies. And I was always on the influencer and celebrity marketing side of things. That's where my career was spent, understanding what influencers and celebrities to pair with various products, who to launch brands with, what influencers were authentic and driving conversions, which ones had just large followings that really didn't mean much. At the same time, I built my own personal Instagram following, Boy with No Job, to nearly 2 million followers. My wife is a huge influencer, or she'd hate that I called her that, podcaster, comedian, so much more than that, called Girl with No Job, that has over 3 million followers on Instagram. Her and her sister Jackie co-host The Toast that reaches millions and millions of millennial women a week. I co-host a podcast called Good Guys with Josh Peck that reaches millions as well. And overall, I'm just giving you this background because we had these really large communities, and the goal was we didn't know what we wanted to launch. We just knew that we wanted to launch something authentic in the image of the community, as opposed to us pretending that we had some revolutionary idea that was going to change the fabric of society. It was really, what white space can we have our community identify for us, as opposed to preaching to them that we're creating something that they need, when in reality, us as marketers don't know what anybody needs, right? We just adapt to what consumers tell us they need, and then all of a sudden we find an authentic way to storytell and create that one-to-one relationship. And so we, 2.5 years ago, put together a Google form asking thousands of our followers their opinions on logos, flavors, can designs, alcohol percentage, alcohol base, And we hand direct messaged that on Instagram and called that R&D group the Spritz Society. So the name of the brand, Spritz Society, comes from the empathetic approach we took to building it through community. And they asked for a wine-based sparkling cocktail that tasted great. Ultimately, I don't know how many hard seltzers you've tried in your life. The vast majority of them simply don't taste good. And then when you add wine to the equation, most of the time they either don't use the right liner or there's too many sulfides, and all of a sudden you have this negative experience with smell. And so the task at hand was just make a wine-based sparkling cocktail that tasted great. And we got to work, and so far so good. We won USA Today's Best Canned Cocktail of 2022, beating out spirits giants such as Cutwater Spirits that was acquired for $1 billion by Anheuser-Busch. We have 5 SKUs: grapefruit, blood orange, pineapple, lemon, and peach. We're available in variety packs as well. And every single step of the process is guided by community. And we make sure that any R&D related decision, any new markets, anything at all, there's a need from the customer as opposed to a gut reaction from, or a gut feeling from our internal team.
So a lot to unpack there. How many doors would you say you're in now?
So we have 2 sides of the business. We have a direct-to-consumer side of the business, which is how we launched. We launched in 46 out of 50 states, got all of our own licenses, and used that really as lead gen to say, okay, we have the most pull in these 8 markets. Let's go into wholesale in these 8 markets. So right now we're in 8 wholesale markets, 46 direct markets, and that's by design. It's incredibly capital intensive to launch a new market. It's incredibly time intensive to launch a new market. Any startup brand that says that they're going wholesale in 40 states, it's kind of like having 40 kids, right? Like you want to limit the number of kids that you can have so that you can pay attention to each one and make sure that they're getting everything that they deserve, that they're getting your time, attention, that you're programming the markets properly, that you have enough money to go into incentives with distributors, that you have enough money to do price programmings or meet and greets or whatever it may be. So conscious decision to go deep, not wide. And we started off in 8 markets: New York, California, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Massachusetts, and Illinois. And that's all based on direct-to-consumer data.
And yeah, the drawing from your community to build the product is key, but you did something way bigger than that to start, which is what we call linear commerce, which is you created an audience and then created a product. And I think even there's a lot of people that pay lip service to it, where it's funny. I actually had a gig before this where I was building a newsletter for boomers called, I haven't talked about this on the podcast, called Boundless Boomer. And we were going to sell them CBD, but we kind of skipped the part where it was, where we were asking them and inquiring of them. We just sort of went in with these preconceived notions of, what we thought boomers would want to buy CBD, as opposed to sort of like really having that consultative process where you get to and I guess that helps with everything too. That helps unlock them as ambassadors, helps you understand the kind of influencers that are going to be the most authentic, that help you, get your message across. It's probably just a huge benefit to the whole business.
Yeah. And the truth is, it makes being sort of vulnerable to start and open to feedback makes it so much easier to scale early. It's a completely different business though, makes it so much easier to create community early, but still very difficult to scale, right? Like those initial people that you're talking to, our open rates are like nobody's ever seen. Like our conversion rates on email are through the roof. As we start to scale though, it's no longer the community that gave you feedback on creating a product. Now you're just taking, okay, this was the sample size, and now you're finding her friend and her friend and her friend and her friend, and it's finding new tactics and new ways to add them to the community and keep it authentic. But it's very, very interesting. I don't look down on anybody who they're both very unique ways to launch a product. One, I think, builds a stronger foundation that allows you to have real legs to stand on when it comes to preaching about product attributes, or really knowing that what you're selling is something that somebody wants. But ultimately, when the rubber meets the road, you're going to need to find new ways to reach a larger audience anyways. So it's interesting
forever
yeah.
and ever. Yeah. Like to make the splash and to have that product product, market fit is amazing. You've built that, but then to sustain it and scale it is a whole other thing. At this point, what would you say is your D2C to retail split?
We're at about 60-40 right now, wholesale to DTC. We launched, It was 100% DTC. It is so much easier, or I shouldn't say easier, it's so much more efficient to scale doors in retail than it is to acquire new customers online. A huge misconception is that direct to consumer, particularly in a business like alcohol, saves you so much money because you can cut out the 3-tier system, when in reality, FedEx and UPS are just as expensive as any 3-tier system. Shipping costs for shipping something as heavy as alcohol is through the roof. And so ultimately, it's best to use it as a customer acquisition tool. We're not pushing it nearly as much as one would think in terms of one-offs, because the margin profile is just not there. And then you'll sort of meet a consumer who's like, why are you so expensive online? And it's like, believe us, no direct-to-consumer brands for the most part are lining their pockets. They're expensive because they have to be. They're expensive because it's very... Yeah.
We were just talking about that. It was originally the case with brands that we say, we pass the savings on to you. You go to direct to consumer, we pass the savings on to you. It's funny that in some cases now there's an inverse when you actually look at shipping costs being so crazy.
It depends completely on the vertical. If you go and somebody's selling you a t-shirt for $120, believe me, they're taking a 95% margin, right? Like they're making that t-shirt for nothing because it costs nothing to ship. It's so light. And the product itself is very cheap. Not in all cases, but in most. But when it comes to something heavier, consumers these days, I'm sure you see it all the time, they love free shipping. So if you love free shipping, you're going to need to pay for it one way or another. We can just build it into the cost of what we're selling you or charge you shipping, right?
I wanted to ask, how do you think of yourself? We just did a live event in Las Vegas. We had Mini Katana speaking. They think about themselves. Isaac thinks about himself as a media company first, product company second, basically. He's trying to build a media empire of people who love katanas and anime and things like that, and he's crushing it. They're going to hit 300 million monthly impressions on YouTube Shorts next month. How do you think of yourself? Are you a media? You're like Jay-Z. You're not a businessman. You're a businessman. But also, how do you think of yourself?
I can't ever be compared to him, but I so appreciate that. The long-term goal is to be a media company first, product second, certainly. That is the end goal is you want to build something that people want to be a part of regardless of what you're selling them, right? That's end game. Today, though, especially we picked probably the most crowded market on the planet. Ready-to-drink beverages, every single person made a hard seltzer. Every single person wanted to put something in a can because the acquisition multiples were great or the opportunity seemed great. There was some reason why everybody got involved. It was just a hot category. And as a result, we knew that we needed to make a product that stood on its own, that tasted great, that was something that if you went into a liquor store and you tried it, you'd buy it based on taste, regardless of if you knew the community or not. So we really went product heavy first, knowing that the market wasn't missing a well-marketed, ready-to-drink beverage that had a lot of money. Like this space is very different. This space is dominated by explosive players with the deepest pockets you've ever seen and bad product. So we've reverse engineered. Sure, we have this media company, but we really are product first. And once we get the product to a critical mass, all of a sudden, at some point, hopefully the media aspect overtakes product. But they're growing at the same time, if that makes sense, because of the industry we're in.
And you benefited early on as well by your category, your space within the category as well, right? Being a wine beverage, you're freer to ship than other products, D2C, is that right?
Yeah, so wine is the only alcohol class you can legally ship direct to consumer. Any other alcohol class, including malt-based beverages, you legally cannot. You'd have to go through like a reserve bar or through, it's not really direct to consumer, but like a Drizzly. That would be like a 3-tier version of DTC. But for us, it was important to us to get our own shipping licenses and truly be direct to consumer so that we could gather our first party data from Shopify. And for the 10,000 people that bought in Texas, we now have a listserv of 10,000 people to go back to them and say, hey, we're available in your local HEB. Go in and shop. Or we have this event at Austin Mini Mart. Go in and like it's creating ambassadorship from our original direct-to-consumer listserv because the people who bought early are also diehard fans of the brand. Like, can you imagine, like I think about this all the time. The only way that you're going to try a product online before you've ever seen it in person is if you love like either the story or the person that you're buying it from. But it's a very risky proposition to go online and buy 24 cans of something that you've never tried or you've never come in contact with. So we knew that first surge of people that bought, those were people that we could easily turn into BAs.
Amazing. It's funny. There's so many alcohol brands and beverage brands on the list. There was definitely a few at the event. I went to this My First Million event in Vancouver a month ago, and they had someone come up on stage, and he was pitching like in a hot seat. It was sort of a pitch type event, but he ended up just sort of telling the whole audience his problems, and it was kind of grim actually, where he had created this beverage and his friends and family had loved it, and in his very small sort of neighborhood, he'd made a splash, and they'd invested a bunch, and at one point he was just like, and I owe a lot of money, and we're like, oh, everyone in the audience just sort of like cringed. But to that, so this is a long preface to ask about like what are the things that are scaling the business. Obviously, you've made the splash with your audience, the great product market fit, all of that great stuff. But what are the things that you're needing to do now to scale it to those next levels?
Team and effort. I can relate to what that gentleman said because it's such a capital intensive business and people don't realize how capital intensive it is. You need money for team. You forget paid media marketing. You need money for point of sale materials. You need money for distributor incentives. You need money for pricing programs. You need money. It's all piles up. And that's why going deep, not wide was so important, because the more markets you have, the less you can do of this in each market. Sorry, can you repeat the question?
The question is like what I think is like where, what are the levers that you're pulling to keep scaling?
Oh, yes.
To get, once you've got that initial traction in retail and DTC, specifically retail, I'm kind of interested in.
It's effort. It's 100% effort. It's showing up. It's being there. It's being like front lines of these pitch meetings. It's the team going in store every single day and meeting and building relationships with individual store managers or individual distributor reps. But this industry is so personal. It's all about creating one-to-one connections. It's archaic. And if you can crack the archaic nature of the business, it pays dividends. But to somebody that's not used to it, it's incredibly daunting. Like we were chatting about this offline right before the podcast, but the reason I'm in 5 states and 2 countries in 2 weeks is because you have to be there. Nothing gets done if you're not there in person. It's the polar opposite of this new Zoom world that we're living in post-COVID. It really is show up, shake hands, something will get done. If you don't, it'll take you so much longer. So much longer. Yeah, exactly. Liquid to lips. Liquid to lips.
Liquid to lips. Cans in hand, sips and lips. We were just saying that at the mastermind. Yeah. And then, what about influencers at this point? Are influencers or the content that you're creating, like how important is obviously the content that's in the podcast, but how important is your content marketing for these brands to continue to, I guess, have the halo effect to help grow retail as well? Yeah.
So when we first launched this company, there was a general rule: we won't be paying any influencers, because in my experience, paying macro influencers is an awesome tactic for a legacy brand. It's an awesome tactic for a brand that has mass distribution, right? But on the macro side, you're reaching international folks, you're reaching national folks, you're so spread out. So ultimately, while Kylie Jenner talking about your product is helpful, it's not helpful unless you have such unbelievable distribution that that person will walk the next day into a Walmart or into a Target or into a Kroger and see it, right? So day one, it was like, we're not paying influencers. Then, and I'll shout her out, her name is Erica Ekman. Her company name is Echo Digital. She really works with these performance-driven influencers. And we started to pay, it's a small subset, but still think it's interesting. We started to pay Weight Watchers influencers because our product is all natural, real cane sugar, 4 points, and ultimately creating that relationship with their audience for our product is something early that was working. So I'm a big fan of finding these like deep communities where I can pay somebody $1,000 or $2,000 and I can see a return on investment of $1,000 or $2,000. But from a traditional influencer perspective, we don't like to pay people. But we are looking into bringing in celebrity brand ambassadors and influencer brand ambassadors, people that really own a particular market. So an influencer that maybe has a few 100,000 followers, but lives in South Carolina, and all of a sudden she can be the perfect face for the South Carolina market when we launch it. She can do the meet and greets. She can do the bar hopping. She can do, like, her face can be on billboards and on point of sale materials, because ultimately I mentioned that we're product first. Myself, Claudia, our community, our family are lifting this product up, but ultimately we want the product to stand on its own. And we want you to love the product because of some authentic relationship you have with whoever sold it to you. So if that is that person in South Carolina, then I think it's a great strategy.
How do you create portals into your own content? Like, how do you promote? How do you, like, because you don't want to be too salesy on your in your media. So how do you promote Spritz Society in your family of media?
It's so hard. It's so hard because again, we launched it so authentically that I don't know how much they mind that I'm so salesy. Like, it just, the biggest piece is, how can I find the time to continue to create the content that they like that doesn't include Spritz Society? So something that's really helped me is through this, I launched Good Guys with Josh Peck. I never had my own podcast. The podcast is scaled. It's huge. And we're only 30 episodes in, but Josh and I have a great time, and that leads to, we'll do video podcasts just like this, and I'll be able to clip videos, right? And all of a sudden, like, that hour becomes something you can listen to, something you can watch on Instagram. And I think that's really helped. But light branding moments, like, I'll always try and wear a Spritz Society hat, or I'll try to have product next to me even when I'm not talking about it. Those brand awareness product placement moments I think are great. But frankly, still struggling to figure out the right way to make branded content. It has been very Ben selling this product, less Ben integrating the product into memes or into funny videos, or it's hard.
It is hard. It's, I've just been trying to sell this mastermind for the past 6 weeks or so, and just figuring out how to do that in an authentic way. I'll say, if you want to send me a 12-pack, I will gladly start helping you corner the D2C market.
Great. Yes.
First,
will do.
It'll become my new Liquid Death Mountain Water, but more Vegas.
Yeah, definitely. I think that Kendall is listening. So Kendall, let's please send Eric. Let's please send Eric some product. Yeah, would love that.
I want to ask, if we were to get, so this is a sort of a stock question we ask, and I'm curious in your case where you'd put it. If we were to give you $50,000 to be used in the marketing of your brand, where would you deploy that in the short term?
Such a good question. Not to sound like this business is so expensive. 50 grand does not do a lot.
Yeah.
And so
what do you need to make? What would be a splash? Like, what would you do? So you've got your level that you're growing at. You've probably got some steady growth going. What would be the capital infusion you'd need to see that the next level of growth you're after? I think that being able to, what I'd love to do is spend money on things that I can't directly attribute ROI to, which I haven't been able to do to date because it's too risky with a young business. But I would love to put together like a national out-of-home campaign and just have billboards tracking towards retail. And for when we launch, we're launching Walmarts in Florida in middle of April. Like, put together an out-of-home strategy that targets billboards with high visibility surrounding Walmarts. Like, that would be amazing. It's just such a difficult bet to make when you really have no way of tracking the
effectiveness of any of those ads. So in terms of like a dollar amount of capital infusion, like $500,000 to test out of home would be awesome. Again, like treating it just as a $500,000 test budget, which is a dream. If I had $50,000, I think I'd use it towards some kind of a lower end festival sponsorship. Finding that right partner where they're willing to purchase enough product that we can make back some of that. But you're spending to be in front of a Coachella audience or a Stagecoach audience or a Hangout Fest in Alabama, something like that, something experiential.
I like that. That's great. What advice do you have out there? Like I think you said a lot to our listeners here, but I know we have a lot of beverage people in the audience. Any sort of final words to people in the beverage game?
In the beverage game, you're not alone. This is really hard, and people don't realize how hard it is. You need to sell to so many different people. The first person you need to sell to is your investor. The second person you need to sell to is your distributor. You then need to sell to your retailer. You then need to sell to your customer. So it's a lot, and take a deep breath and make sure that you have the right team around you and realize that you're pushing up a mountain and you're going to push, like you're going to get it up the mountain. But I mean that you're not alone. Like we are all grinding in this industry together that is very, very different from 99.9% of industries because we're a controlled substance. The three-tier system is difficult. It's hard to navigate.
The incumbents are so entrenched. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Bud and it's all the liquors. You just think about these families that made liquors hundreds of years ago and they're still like Aperol, you know, like.
No, they're there. And it's all about realizing that ultimately the consumer today appreciates good products. Like we are in the age of Poppy and Oli Pop. And if you told anybody a year ago, or not a year ago, 10 years ago, that an alternative to Coke would have any kind of market share, anything, they'd sort of laugh at you, right? Like it's not,
it's true.
It's like these industries are ripe for disruption, and they are going to constantly make it seem like it's too big of a battle for you to pursue, when in reality, the incumbents need you in the end game to continue to compete, because the modern day consumer is eventually going to become sick of what they're drinking, and they're going to want something different. And every time that an incumbent tries to incubate something, they end up failing, which is why the opportunity for acquisition is so ripe. So keep pushing, stay focused. I mentioned this early, really don't go into 40 markets, and it's going to be really hard, but don't chase revenue just to chase revenue. Don't open new markets just because it seems like it's an easy way to make money. Be okay with declining a national distribution opportunity if you're not ready. Be okay with declining a national retailer opportunity if you're not ready. Because if you go into 40 states with Walmart and you fail, your brand's dead, right? Like decline 39 of them, take one and succeed. Those are just like some small pieces. Also make sure that you have a team that you can trust. You can't do everything yourself. Building a team is probably the hardest part about building a business, but slowly but surely find the people that you like and hire fast and fire faster. If somebody's not right for your business, get rid of them. Ultimately, we've all been fired, and they'll find another job. Always don't burn bridges, but your time is equally as important as your money, and making sure that the people that are with you are on the same path to helping you succeed is very important.
I feel like this podcast is a beverage mastermind in and of itself. And the other tip I would have is try to partner with Ryan Reynolds, because he just sells every company he does for $1 billion.
Unbelievable.
Who is your ideal? Like, we love to use this podcast as a manifestation platform. I'm sure you reach a lot of celebs with your content already, with being with Josh Peck there. But who is your ideal celebrity you'd like to manifest to your brand in 2023, even through organic partnerships?
Yeah. It's such a hard question, because there are two groups that I'd like to go after. We sort of have that millennial female down pat. The question is, do we go for the slightly older woman and go with a Gwyneth Paltrow, Reese Witherspoon, Jennifer Coolidge, if Kate Hudson didn't already have an alcohol, like that vibe? Or do we go with the Gen Z consumer and go after, I don't know, like a Sydney Sweeney who's having a moment, or a Zendaya, or like somebody of that younger generation. So ultimately, female that loves the product. Authenticity is first and foremost what's important here, and I can't imagine pushing a product that I didn't like, so I wouldn't want anybody working with us that didn't like the product.
Nice.
But yeah, Ryan or Ryan Reynolds, if he's down.
Or just Ryan
Reynolds. I mean, the stuff with Mint Mobile too. What the fuck is Mint? Like, who has Mint Mobile? Like, it's crazy. It's like
an anti-prestige brand, right? Like, because it's like a lower tier, lower service, and he just
He just really makes, you know what's so interesting? I'm sure somebody's thought of this, but just Ryan Reynolds should open his own ad agency, because the amount of money. Oh, he does. Okay.
Yeah, maximum effort. I email at least once a month in my effort to bring him on the podcast. So
yeah, because
I'm aware of it.
The guy is a content genius, and the way that I'm sure he's writing these scripts, if not, he is the greatest ghostwriter of all time that writes in his voice and in his tone, and he has this whole like shtick of bringing you in, bringing the product in. Like I mentioned that I have difficulty making branded content. That guy certainly does not.
Yeah.
It is unbelievable what he's able to do.
Self-deprecating, brutally self-deprecating, which is, I feel like, a very good Canadian trait. So I have to. So, anyways, Ryan, if you're listening, just come on the podcast, talk to Ben, join the Spritz Society.
Please.
You'll get both of these sweet hats. Like these two hats are pretty
yeah.
great hats,
the hats are yours. Hats are yours.
Ben, thanks for coming on today. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. I appreciate it.
Spritzsociety.com, right? Like, first of all, plug your stuff.
Yeah, so spritzsociety.com, you can use code BWNJ, which stands for Boy With No Job, and you can get 15% off your first order. So spritzsociety.com, Boy With No Job at checkout. I'd recommend a variety pack and peach to start. That way you can try all 5 flavors and figure out what you like for next time. Note, just because I know that you're in Canada, we are not currently shipping internationally, so this is only for your U.S. listeners. And then in wholesale, if you live in New York, Florida, California, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Massachusetts, or Illinois. Texas, we're at H-E-B. Texas, we're launching with Albertsons. Florida, we're launching with Walmart. We're in Total Wine nationally. Bevmo in California. There's tons of places to get Spritz Society. Go to our store locator, spritzsociety.com. You can click on the store locator and find us locally. But the best thing to do to understand the brand is follow us on social. The Instagram handle is just Spritz, S-P-R-I-T-Z. Don't ask me how I got it. I don't divulge my secrets, but we are just Spritz. So we won the SEO Instagram battle, which was exciting.
For a boy with no job, you're quite the hustler. Yeah.
We say that it's an ironic handle. You just can't change it anymore. Like
no, I wouldn't do it. And you don't have a job. This is what you're doing. This isn't someone's job, right?
That's definitely true. This is not a traditional job. So
you're driving the bus. Anyway, Ben, this was a lot of fun. Thanks again. We'll catch you soon.
Yeah. Thank you, Eric.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you're not a subscriber to our newsletter, you can do that right now at direct-to-consumer, all one word, .co. I'm Eric Dyck, and this has been the D2C Podcast. We'll see you next time.